want to know, I'm Alexis, aka The Sloth Reader, and I'm here today to do a giant wrap-up for everything I read in September and October. So I'm going to try to be pretty quick about everything because I think I read 11 things in both September and October. So I really should have filmed separate wrap-ups, but I didn't, and here we are in my new setup, unless I hate it, which I'll find out when I'm editing this video later, but for right now it's gonna have to work. So starting off, the first thing I completed in the month of September was Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, Book 3, The Ship of the Dead. This is the third book in the trilogy. This is the one that kind of wraps up everything. I gave this one 4 stars, really enjoyed it. I don't have that much to say because it's a Rick Riordan book and I pretty much feel the exact same thing about all of them. They're fun, they're enjoyable. I absolutely love the cast of characters in this series so much, and like watching Magnus like develop as a character was just so much fun. Highly enjoyable. I absolutely adore the series. The next 2 things I'm going to mention are actually 2 manga, and I actually read one in September and one in October, but I'm just going to mention them both now because they're part of the same series, and that is that I read Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Full Metal Alchemist. These are the Full Metal editions that they're releasing as like special collector's editions, so they're hardbacks and they have like new typesetting and everything, and I gave them both 5 stars. If you guys don't know, Full Metal Alchemist is one of my favorite things in existence. I absolutely adore this. Honestly, if you take one recommendation from me, it should be Full Metal Alchemist, because I genuinely think this is like universally considered fantastic, so I gave these both 5 stars. Absolutely adore the series, love these new editions, can't wait to collect them all as they're coming out. The next thing I read in September actually is one of my favorite books I've read this year, and I have definitely talked about it since then, but that was Out of the Easy by Rudess. This is Rudess' sophomore novel that she wrote following Between Shades of Grey, and it takes place in 1950s in New Orleans, and I loved everything about this book. I can't say that other people will love this book as much as I did, but I'm from New Orleans. That was the place I was born and raised, and I felt like I was walking the streets of my home reading this book, and she happened to capture a lot of the nuances of the city and its history, and you can tell she really did her research. In her author's note for this book, she said that she didn't want to write a deeply personal novel after writing Between Shades of Grey, which was deeply personal to her as it dealt with like her family's history. But it's so funny because then she wrote Out of the Easy, which was so deeply personal for me, and I loved everything about it. There's a lot of really interesting themes in this book about family and about feminism, and there's a queer side character that I just really loved their story, and I just really loved this book, and just how much, like I said, it absolutely made me feel like I was home again. The next book I read in September was And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness. This features illustrations by Ravina Sai, and the illustrations in this book are incredible. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's about a pod of whales that are like in a ancient conflict with humans, but this book has so many moral lessons in it, like about prejudice and history and when we should question the stories we've been told our whole lives, and also like what makes a legend and what gives a legend its power. And I really enjoyed it. It definitely still had that Patrick Ness kind of feel to it, and it was really enjoyable, and like I said, the illustrations were gorgeous, so I did give this one 4 stars. The next book I read in September was My Lady Jane by the Lady Janies, which is Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. I absolutely adored the first half of this novel. I could have given the first half of this novel 5 stars hands down, because it took history and then it just kind of gave it a fantastical element that was really funny, was super enjoyable to read. The part about it I didn't love was that the whole second half kind of took history and just threw it out the window, and then just kind of got really over fantastical and kind of a little too ridiculous for me, and it stopped being quite as funny as it was in the first half. But I still really enjoyed this. I still definitely think it's worth the read if you want kind of like a funny historical fantasy novel. So yeah, I read this. I'm really happy I read this. Can't wait to read My Plain Jane, because like I said, this one was a lot of fun. The next book I read in September was Warcross by Marie Lu, and I gave this book 3 stars. It was just okay. I honestly thought the like virtual reality video game part was going to be a lot more like important to the story, but I feel like that was really only like 25% of the book, and then the rest of the book was honestly just kind of really boring and predictable. There's 2 like major plot twists in this book, and the first one I figured out like 15% of the way through the book, and then the other one I figured out like 60% of the way through the book, and it's just really disappointing given how much I really respect Marie Lu as a writer and as a person. I just didn't love this, and I don't honestly know if I'm gonna read Wildcard or not, so again, I gave this one a 3 stars. The next book I read was another 3-star read for me, and that was Fans of the Impossible Life by Kate Scelsa. I don't know how to explain this book. This book honestly was so messy, but I feel like that was the point of it, was to be kind of messy, because it follows 3 main characters who are all very heavily dealing with things. One character was previously bullied and harassed, and so it follows that. One character heavily deals with mental illness, and one character deals with growing up in a foster home and also with a drug addiction. And so it's like, there's a lot going on in this book. It's really not that long, and it's just kind of all over the place. Like, there were parts where I felt like I knew where it was going, and then it would just kind of be like, oh, just kidding, this thing we've been leading up to is not really a big deal, let's move on. And I was like, what is happening? There were parts throughout this novel where I, in turn, equally really liked each of the main characters, and then there were parts in this book where I was kind of like, oh, I don't like these main characters. So I don't think it's a bad book. I definitely want to give a trigger warning for bullying and for suicide and for kind of like an unhealthy foster situation and also for drug addiction, but it was an experience, but I'm not sure if I came out of it feeling like it was a good experience. The next book I read in September was Sadie by Courtney Summers. I gave this one 4 stars. It was good, enjoyable. I definitely see why other people really like it. I think it's a good story. I don't think it's as incredible as other people make it out to be, because there's really nothing impressive about the mystery element. You know, it's really actually pretty straightforward. There's nothing surprising. I think what makes this special is that it has a lot of commentary on women and how society views them and the kind of stuff that society lets men get away with, and also just a lot on like roles and poverty and wealth. And so it has a lot of commentary, and I think that's what people really love about it. But as far as the mystery goes, it's kind of just okay. But I will say I did really like the podcast element. That was pretty cool, which is why I highly recommend listening to this one on audio. The next book I read in September I gave 5 stars to, and that was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I absolutely loved this, and I'm not a kind of person who likes books written in verse, but this book was incredible to me. The main character, Xiomara, is so well-rounded and dynamic of a character. She has flaws and she has strengths. And sometimes we see her get emotional about things maybe she's justified in, maybe sometimes things she's not justified in. And it's just, it was so good to read because the main character is so powerful, and the way that slam poetry is explored through this as a method of like releasing your feelings is so powerful, and I just really, really enjoyed it, and it totally took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting it, but I highly recommend The Poet X because it was just so enjoyable. The next book I read in September was Out of the Blue by Sophie Cameron, and this was a really, really fun, adorable little novel. I gave it 4 stars. This is basically like E.T. but with a queer main character and a queer romance, except instead of a wrinkly alien creature, it's angels that are kind of adorable and fall from the sky. But basically all of the like feel-goodness and endearingness of E.T. the movie is in this book. Like, if you watch E.T. and you're like, man, that's so cute, read Out of the Blue. That's the best way I can explain it, is that it literally, the whole time I was reading it, was giving me E.T. vibes. Queer main character who is biracial, she's Scottish and Sri Lankan, and her love interest has cystic fibrosis and is also, like I said, I think bisexual. I just adored this. It was so much fun. It was adorable, it was cute, it was the perfect little quick read, and again, it weirdly enough reminds me of E.T. The next book I read in September was Darius Is Not OK by Adib Haram. And I really enjoyed this. I gave this one 4 stars. It didn't impact me, I think, quite as much as I was hoping it would, but I acknowledge that there's a lot of parts about this book that weren't written for me directly as an audience. This book strongly deals with mental illness, and I really, really liked a lot of the commentary that the author put into it, and I believe it's also in own voices in that he also deals with mental illness. It features a main character who is biracial. He's American and Iranian, and it's basically about Darius's struggle with connecting to his ancestral background, his ethnic background, and it's also about him feeling disconnected from part of his family. And I am not biracial, but I can only imagine how powerful that storyline is for people who are biracial. Now you guys get to see my cats running around in all the background of my videos. I think Adib Haram did a really good job of exploring a lot of these different feelings and angsts that teens feel, especially teens who fall under these categories of being biracial, of being mentally ill. And I really, really enjoyed reading Darius as a character. I thought he was really interesting to follow. I didn't love the writing. I think that was the main thing that held me back from giving this 5 stars. I just didn't love the writing. There were a lot of phrases that kept being repeated over and over again, and I didn't feel like they were that strong when like put into context, and I just didn't love the writing. So I definitely think this is a powerful novel. I 100% recommend it to every person. It just wasn't an absolute favorite for me. The last thing I read in September was Saga Volume 5 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoy the Saga story. Every volume ends on a cliffhanger, so I'm always so excited to see like where the story is gonna go from here. But again, gave this one 4 stars, really enjoyed it. I'm so happy I have the rest of the volumes so I can eventually pick them up when I want to. Moving on to the things I read in October, the first thing I read was The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. This is the short story you got for pre-ordering The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, and it's basically about Monty like trying to set up a first time for him and Percy, and it was adorable. I gave it 4 stars because, you know, honestly I did really enjoy it. I love the hi. Expect this in all of my videos coming in the future if I decide to keep this set up, because that's gonna happen a lot. I really enjoyed this. It was really cute. I absolutely loved following Monty and Percy and Felicity again, because the shenanigans that Monty always seems to get himself in just bring a smile to my face, so I absolutely loved it. The next thing I read in October was Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray. This is the 3rd book in the Diviner series. I gave this one 5 stars. No one is surprised. I absolutely love the books in the Diviner series. So many things that happened in this book really shocked me, and then there were things in this book that my heart was feeling a lot of things while I was reading this book. I literally sat in my car for like an hour just trying to finish the audiobook one day because I was like, no, I need to know what's going to happen right this second. And I am finally caught up on this series. I can finally say this is one of my favorite series, except now I have to wait 9 years or whatever until the last book comes out, and it's going to kill me. The next thing I read in October was a graphic novel called Postal Volume 1. I give this one 3 stars. It was just okay. I didn't really love the art. I didn't really love the story. The main character in this has autism, and I don't believe the story's own voices, and I do not have autism, so I can't speak on the representation. Again, I didn't love the story. It was just kind of boring, and yeah, just gave it 3 stars. It was just okay. Then after that, I read Revival Volume 1. I really enjoyed this. I gave this first volume 4 stars. This is basically a story about basically a whole bunch of people came back from the dead. It was like all people who died around this time came back, and it's basically about this small town in like Michigan or Wisconsin or something like that, dealing with the aftermath of this, and it's about a detective trying to solve like crimes going on in this town, but there's also like bigger stuff happening, and I really enjoyed this first volume. I like the art style. I do like the art style quite a bit. It's really colorful, and I really liked the characters, and I'm very intrigued to see where the story goes from here. So yeah, I gave Revival Volume 1 4 stars. Then I read Through the Woods by Emily Carroll, which is 5 horror short story graphic novels. This is another one where I absolutely loved the art style. It's very graphic because it only really uses like 4 or 5 colors to kind of be as dynamic as possible, and definitely there were some stories that were stronger than others for me, but overall I really, really enjoyed this, and I would 100% read a second one if Emily Carroll decided to make it, because it's perfect for Halloween, it's definitely spooky, and like I said, I really love the art. After that, I read All In by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is the 3rd book in the Natural series, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I've really been enjoying this series, and the mystery in this one was really, really enjoyable, especially like seeing the characters like figure it out, and this one also featured the characters dealing with a lot of emotional stuff from their backstories, which I really, really appreciated. I really like the pacing in this series a lot. I really, really love the characters. I like the mysteries a lot, and so yeah, I super enjoyed this one. Cannot wait to read the final book. The next book I read in October was Black Wings Beating by Alex London. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read the sequel. I believe this is going to be a duology. This follows 2 twins, Bryson and Kylie, and I really loved both of them, and I really enjoyed following them as they're kind of dealing with their own personal things, but they're also like dealing with like their relationship between them and the damage kind of done by their father, who was very abusive to both of them. and I just really loved it. Like I said, Bryson is queer, and I really, really loved just how kind of endearing and adorable he was, but I also really respected Kylie a lot because she's such a Hufflepuff. You can't convince me otherwise, because literally this whole book is built on her loyalty to Bryson, and I absolutely loved it. And I love this world. It's so interesting to me, and there's so much going on, and I can't wait to see how that's all expanded upon in the next book. That's the only reason I didn't give this 5 stars, is because I do feel like the world building definitely could have used some work, but I'm hoping we're going to see the rest of that in the second book. I definitely want to give trigger warnings for parental abuse, and I also want to give a trigger warning for animal fighting, because at the very beginning of this book, there's a scene where birds are pitted against each other basically in like combat. So I definitely want to give a trigger warning for that. The next book I want to mention is actually a DNF, and it breaks my heart to mention, but that is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, aka Shannon McGuire. I made it halfway through this book until I just could not read anymore. This book is like 500 and something pages, and it's so boring. I was so bored, and there's like 70 characters, and I didn't care about any of them. I thought the pacing of the story was so weird because it literally takes like 100 pages before anything happens, and then something happens, and then nothing else happens for like 200 pages, and it really wasn't scary, which I was hoping it was gonna be. I was just bored. I was so bored. I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't enjoy this. I'm so sorry. I wanted to, but I just didn't. However, after reading that, I read a book that I very strongly enjoyed, and that was Contagion by Erin Bowman. This was one of my most anticipated releases for this year, and I'm so glad it didn't disappoint because I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. Only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I do think it leaned a little more towards action in the second half, and it kind of lost what made the first half of this book quite as scary. But this book was definitely creepy, especially in the first half. It was interesting. I really loved the characters. There is a main character who is queer, and also there are multiple people of color characters, and I just really enjoyed this. It's no surprise I'm a big fan of Erin Bowman's other stuff, but I feel like she definitely just stepped it up a notch with this one, and I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read the next one because it was spooky, it was fun, and it left on a massive cliffhanger because, oh boy, I cannot wait to read Immunity. After Contagion, I read Still Lives by Maria Hummel, which I ended up giving 3 stars to. This is another one where I just felt like it was really dragged out, which is saying something because the book wasn't even 300 pages, but it just felt like it was going on and on and on, and it spent more time kind of focusing on the main character than it did on the mystery, which I'm beginning to realize I don't know if I love in like a standalone book. I think I much prefer, like, give me a mystery, don't give me 300 pages of a character's like dealing with stuff and then be like, oh, here's a mystery. I don't know that I enjoy that, which I definitely feel like is the case with this one. And I just also felt like the whodunit didn't feel like fully thought out, because it felt like it was kind of all just like, oh, here's the mystery, and just didn't love it. So I gave it 3 stars. It was just okay. I would recommend it if you're really interested in it, but it was just okay. And the final thing I'm going to talk about in this very, very long video, the last thing I read in October, was Toil and Trouble, 15 Tales of Women in Witchcraft by Jessica Spotswood and Tess Sharp, or I should say edited by Jessica Spotswood and Tess Sharp. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars because I think my average rating for each short story was about like a 3.7 or something like that. As with all anthologies, there were definitely stories I really, really liked, and there were definitely stories that were just okay or worse. Just going through them, I'll just tell you guys what I rated them. The first short story is Star Song by Taylor K. Magia, which I gave 3 stars. Afterbirth by Andrea Kramer, which I gave 5 stars. The Heart in Her Hands by Tess Sharp, I gave 4 stars. Death in the Sawtooths by Lindsay Smith, I gave 2 stars. The Truth About Queenie by Brandy Colbert, I gave 3 stars. The Moon Apple Menagerie by Shweta Thakkar, I gave 3 stars. The Legend of Stone Mary by Robin Talley, I gave 4 stars. The One Who Stayed by Nova Rensuma, I gave 5 stars. That one was definitely one of my favorites. Divine Are the Stars by Zoraida Cordova, I gave 4 stars. Daughters of Baba Yaga by Brenna Yovanov, I gave 3.5 stars. The Well Witch by Kate Hart, I gave 3 stars. Beware of Girls with Crooked Mouths by Jessica Spotswood, I gave 4 stars. Love Spell by Anna Marie Mecklemore, I gave 5 stars, one of my favorites. The Garen Girls by Emery Lord, I gave 5 stars, also one of my favorites. And Why They Watch Us Burn by Elizabeth May, I also gave 5 stars, definitely one of my favorites. So a mixed bag, but I would say that's pretty usual for me with anthologies. I'm happy that there were at least some of these that I really, really love. Alrighty guys, I know that video is super, super long. Hopefully I can cut some time out when I'm editing later. If not, I apologize, and if you've stayed to listen, you're incredible, and I love you all. And I'm sorry I don't make videos as often anymore. I'm trying to work on it. I would absolutely love to know what you guys read in the past couple of months, or if you want to talk to me about what you read in November. If you like what I do, I try to upload 2 videos every week, and I'll see you guys soon with another one.